Thanks so much for coming, Phil, and you were so great. You stood in for Joe, who had to fly to New York. Really appreciate that at the last minute, and lovely to meet you. I was wondering if you could tell me a bit about what you like to invest in, what your passion is, and some of the startups that you may have been interested in.
Sure. So, at Crosslink, we're early stage investors, so generally most often we're coming in at the first round of capital. It could be the seed round, the Series A round. But for us, it's really all about the people. So, a lot of investors say that, but it's particularly true at the earliest stages of the company. So when I'm thinking about a new investment, I think it's less so about specifically what vertical or what specific type of technology it is, and it's more about what the founder story is. Those are the things that I become really interested in, is just kind of where this person came from and how he or she got to wherever they are to start this company, because starting an early stage startup, as you know, it takes a lot of grit and confidence in what you're doing. So I'm always attracted to kind of backstory and how this person got to wherever they are, and why that person has a unique perspective on that market opportunity that they're going after. But yeah, particular interests of mine are generally in enterprise software and IoT. Those are my two core focuses. Within that, I really like businesses that are developing some sort of unique advantage around data as an asset, or creating technologies that allow companies or consumers to take better use of those data sets. As well as I also have done a number of things facing developers, this growing community of developers. There's a lot more developers now than there used to be, and there's a lot more people today that want to create new products using software than there used to be. So I like to invest in companies that are furthering that trend and making it easy to build better products.
Well, I like the basis of your interaction with entrepreneurs, because a lot of the VCs I've known over the years have said it is a people business, and having those relating skills and an interest in the person on the other side of the table, I think helps. It helps for the entrepreneur towards the investor as well, but obviously particularly with the investors, so good on you. Where do you think things are going as far as IoT and big data goes?
That's an interesting question. So IoT has been a buzzword for a long time, and big data, both of those things. I think a lot of times these buzzwords are created ahead of when the actual delivery is made. So big data, I think we heard a lot about that in early 2000s, and really a lot in kind of around 2008 or 9, when Hadoop really started blowing up as a technology empowerment. And non-traditional databases and things like that. And then IoT actually kind of around the same time really became a trend about just thinking about what is possible, connected toasters and like all these things that people are talking about, which I think there was a lot of hype ahead of actual delivery. Yes. You started to see, there's obviously been some exits in IoT like Nest and Dropcam, and there's a lot of bigger companies like Fitbit as well that have kind of developed over time, that are definitely leveraging, the lower cost sensors that you can take advantage of these new products that are coming online. I think there's a lot more to come though. So most of the exits to date have really been more, or bigger businesses are more on the consumer side, but I think where there's a lot of interesting headway still in front of us is more on the enterprise and industrial side. So we've talked a lot about industrial IoT in the venture community, but a lot of these businesses are really still early on in development. Part of the reason I think is because these areas are pretty insecure. So you talk about power plants or manufacturing facilities or anything like that where this technology could become very, very useful. It's these are inherently insecure when connected to the internet, and they're also super critical. So if there is a breach, for example, in a manufacturing plant, that can mean the death of a lot of people, and it could mean a very catastrophic fallout, right? So these companies have been slower to adopt what could be super useful by connecting these sensors to the internet or connecting them to each other. And I think there's a lot of power in that. These things are going to happen. There's just too much value with predictive maintenance and being able to more efficiently, I guess, connect these things together to produce better, more efficient results. There's a lot of barriers still, and there's a lot of legacy software sitting in these places that are that have been built probably in the 80s, 90s that are basically still the same thing, and there's a ton of inefficiencies there. So I think both of these things, there's clearly value. There's just a lot of layers in the stack that need to be developed all the way from storage to security up to these kind of application builders, and then eventually you're going to start to see these use cases explode. But I'm excited about it right now. You're starting to see bigger companies like GE and Schneider and Siemens and these other people that we think of as kind of older technology companies that are actually really investing a lot of money into this space. So I think pretty soon we're going to start to see some big outcomes there.
And in the last year, I think I've seen a couple of movies where they use the theme of someone hacking into a home that's connected, and they were horror movies, obviously. So it's interesting that they have come out of the collective as well before, there's a general uptake of these sort of things, because obviously that is the crazy side of things. If you lose control of the house.
Well, it's pretty scary. And I was at the Black Hat conference, which is a cybersecurity conference in Las Vegas. And among a bunch of other takeaways that I took away from what's going on with technology trends, there was some pretty scary things that I came across. That when you start to think about nation states that are stockpiling zero-day attacks, which are attacks that have never been released into the market. They're just stockpiling these as, which is could become pretty dangerous situation in the world. And I think this is kind of the next generation of how warfare, national warfare will come about. But we don't need to go into that. That's a downer of the day.
But it's good to be aware that not everything's light and bright, and also that can also create a whole new market of cybersecurity, which obviously is really big these days as well. So I know.
Yeah, there's going to be businesses that are built there. Obviously, cybersecurity in general is a massively growing market. I think it's 20-ish billion today, but I think it's going to continue to double every few years. It's just a massive market, and I think that's the next kind of generation is specifically in this kind of critical infrastructure area. It's going to be, can we secure this stuff? And if so, can we actually leverage the data sets for really interesting stuff? So,
do you have any funny stories as a VC?
Yes. What specifically?
Well, anything of being on the other side of the table that's a bit funny or weird. And the reason I ask this question really is I have a little mission of humanising the investors that I know, and I think it's really helpful, again, for that human contact when entrepreneurs come to meet you. There's
one story I'm thinking of where there was a CEO came in to the office, and first of all, I knew it was going to be an interesting meeting because he blew by the receptionist and started just walking directly into the office, and so she had to go run after him and bring him back into a conference room. So that was step one. Step two, we were in the conference room. I was sitting there, and he just said, "Hold on one second," and he just took off his shoes. So he had these like bright orange tennis shoes, and took them off and like placed them on the table, and then started just walking around and did the whole pitch with stinky socks and everything. And then he was a pretty interesting guy, really smart guy. I don't think that you're going to see a lot of really interesting people that are entrepreneurs, because again, you have to have the courage to come in and quit everything and start some crazy idea that's never been done before. So I don't think that's not something you would ever hold against anybody.
And I guess it's a challenge for you too as an investor to try and see past all of that to the real person and whether or not you can form a relationship with them. And
yeah, no, that's a good point. It's something I consciously try to do is actually, you might come into a pitch having preconceived notions about the market opportunity. You had seen other pitches in the past that didn't work out so well. Or you just try to rid yourself of these preconceived notions coming into a pitch. Right. That I think that's something that I'm trying to get better at day in and day out, because, you know, yeah, and then, you know, also just pitching styles. Like, different people are going to have different styles and how they pitch, how they frame things. So trying to see through kind of just the stylistic stuff and more, you know, the actual guts of kind of what they're doing.
Trying to engage with them.
Yeah, and the better you can engage, the better you connect with the entrepreneur, then it's just, it's going to be a better situation on both sides. They're going to understand you more, you're going to understand them more. They'll be more comfortable, yeah.
Fabulous. Look, lovely talking to you, and I'm looking forward to the chat tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.